So good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for attending today's program about Joshua National Park. We're waiting until we have a few more people entering. So if you could just take a moment to mute yourself, please. You're going to have a wonderful tour today. So welcome to Joshua National Park. I want to tell you a little bit about that program. But before I do that, I want to remind you that this is part of the Adult Summer Reading Club program and the Summer Reading Club program at Pasadena Public Library, where we are featuring the book that you can check out at our branches. It's by Connor Knighton, Leave Only Footprints, My Acadia to Zion Journey Through Every National Park. So Connor Knighton actually has spoken for the library already, and you can find on YouTube, Pasadena Library, you can see his visit with us where he's talking about his parks. This book is available for checkout at Pasadena Libraries and also available for purchase at Vroman's Bookstore. So I'm sure you know that our branches are open for extended hours. And so I hope you will come in and visit them and check out your books. You can also go to the Pasadena Public Library webpage and go to our July and August off the shelf and find all of our wonderful programs that are available. And I hope you sign up for those as well. So Joshua Tree National Park is where two deserts meet, two distinct desert ecosystems, the Mojave and the Colorado. They come together in Joshua National Park. It's a fascinating variety of plants and animals make their home there in a land sculpted by strong winds and occasional torrents of rain. Dark nights, our rich cultural history, and surreal geological features add to the wonder of this vast wilderness in Southern California. Joshua Tree National Park is 140 miles east of Los Angeles and 175 miles northeast of San Diego, in case you want to visit it. And so we are welcoming today Sarah Jane Pepper that is here from Joshua Tree National Park. She is a ranger that gives such wonderful, wonderful tours. And she was actually telling me before the program started that last spring, she had the pleasure of meeting our One City, One Story author, Connor Knighton, where he actually came to Joshua Tree. The rangers have homes there at the park, and he came to one of her home and actually recorded her for the CBS Sunday show. So welcome, Sarah. Thank you so much for presenting for us today.
Oh, thank you, Christine. I mean, you could just keep going. You had pretty much my whole intro there. So if you want to continue, we'll fast forward a little bit through that. So hello, everybody. Welcome. I am Sarah Jane. We are on a virtual field trip. Sometimes we call this a virtual program to Joshua Tree National Park. The first thing we always like to do at the beginning of a program is a little weather check. You know, if you're visiting a national park, it's important to know what the weather is while you're there. So I have my thermometer out in the sun, which is a little unfair. Right now, the temperature on the ground temperature here at Black Rock Canyon Campground is 110 degrees. Now that is pretty warm by all accounts. So during this program, we are connecting over a tablet. I'm using a tablet to talk to you, and sometimes the tablet gets really hot and is not able to warn me when it's getting hot. It just suddenly turns off, and then it says temperature warning. So if at any point during the program I suddenly disappear, don't panic. I'm not in danger. The tablet just got too hot. If you start counting in your head backwards from like 100, I bet I'm back before you get to 0. So we have to have a little patience with each other to visit the desert in the summer. It's an extreme place. Some respect for the environment is definitely due here. So during our program today, we're going to chat a little bit about the plants and animals that live in Joshua Tree National Park. Just so you guys are clear, I don't see anybody with their camera on. Oh, somebody has their, thank you, Lindy, I appreciate you. I usually do these programs for students, so I'll probably out of just force of habit, invite you to participate with some motions, which you're welcome to do there at your home. I will prompt you to throw some ideas in the chat occasionally, but you should know, just because I'm outside and it's windy and there's a glare, I'm not able to like constantly be in the chat. So don't think I'm ignoring you if you put something in there. And I don't address it right away. Ms. Reader said that she would collect everybody's questions from the chat. So we'll make sure we get to those at the end. Like she was saying, Joshua Tree National Park is in Southern California. We always use this map here, which has some big green blobs on it. All of these green blobs on my map are national parks in California. We have a whole bunch. We have a really famous one up here, Yosemite National Park, letter Y. If you've visited Yosemite National Park, anybody? This gigantic one over here, this huge national park. This one is Death Valley National Park. If you're planning a trip to Death Valley National Park, I must encourage you to go not in the summer. October, November, December, these are beautiful times of year to visit Death Valley. They had like a recorded temperature of like 130 degrees the other week, so it's not the best time to visit in the summer. I'm way down here at the bottom. This is Joshua Tree National Park. Miss Reader had some exact mileages from you, but I always say we're about 3 hours from the ocean over here in Los Angeles, and also about 3 hours from the southern border with Mexico. So it's some places in Joshua Tree National Park you can see across the border. Signal Mountain right across the border in Mexico is a common landmark you can spy from some high points in the park. This place is named after these funny looking plants. So these are the Joshua trees. And we always like to mention that there have been people living in the area that is now Joshua Tree National Park for thousands of years. We have archaeological evidence that there were people living in this area as long as 8,000 years ago. Wow, you were on mute, but I still heard you gasp. That is amazing. Yes. So we know that there have been many different cultures and groups across the time that have all probably had their own words for this plant. I'm going to put in the chat the Cahuilla word. I've been working on my Cahuilla vocabulary here lately. The Cahuilla word for this plant is umichawa, or I've also heard it pronounced umichua. Scientists, the Latin name for this plant is Yucca brevifolia. It's in the yucca family. It has short leaves, brevifolia. But the name Joshua Tree comes from some Mormon pioneers. They were crossing the desert looking for their new home. I think they were really hot and really tired, because the first time they saw a plant that looked like this, they saw, you know, like one trunk and then some branches out to the side. And it reminded them of a Bible story in which a character named Joshua welcomes travelers to their new home. So they started calling it the Joshua Tree, and the name kind of stuck. This is the far, where I am here in Southern California, is the far southern end of the range of Joshua trees. They grow throughout Southern California, up in the deserts anyway, up through the Mojave National Preserve into Las Vegas. You'll see them in southeastern Nevada, up to St. George, Utah, are all places where you'll find these plants. Now, it's pretty weird that Joshua trees grow in deserts, because the singular most important thing about deserts is how dry they are. All living things, all plants and all animals need water to survive. Let's use our own selves, for example. Everybody take your tongue and move it around in your mouth, like in your cheeks, around your teeth. Hopefully you can feel that it's wet in there. If we feel our bodies on the outside, we feel pretty wet, or we feel pretty dry, unless you just got out of the shower. But inside, we are very wet, and we need to drink a lot of liquid water in order to keep our systems healthy. The bigger something is, the more water it needs. So Joshua trees are really big trees. And they grow in pretty dry places. I'm a little distracted here. I keep hearing a roadrunner clack its beak. If I spy it, I'll grab the camera so you guys can see it. So Joshua trees are large plants, and they live in areas that do not get very much rain. Here at Joshua Tree National Parks, we don't have any rivers. There's no lakes. It does not rain very often. So the plants and animals that are here cope with these extreme dry conditions in a whole variety of ways. We're going to start with the Joshua tree. I'm getting distracted in my own chat here. That's what wildlife will do to you. I'm enthralled. Okay, so Joshua trees cope with the dry conditions of where they live through a variety of adaptations. But the first one I want to chat about is the shape of their leaves. So in order to illustrate what a Joshua tree's leaf is like, we're going to compare them to some other common leaf shapes. So I don't see anybody's cameras up, but I invite you to join me in a modeling exercise. The first thing we're going to model is a leaf that grows on trees that we might find in a forest. Usually trees that grow in forests, like oak trees or maple trees, have flat leaves. So we can model that by taking all of the fingers of one of our hands and putting them together. We're going to imagine that our arm is like a little twig and that our hand is a leaf. We'll take our other hand and we'll imagine some raindrops are falling on our leaf. Now, just let your body go, because we want to see what happens when the raindrops hit the leaf. And I bet if you are doing this modeling exercise with integrity, your rain hand is pushing down on your leaf hand. That's what happens to leaves on a tree in a forest. When the rain comes, the leaves get pushed down and then the rain drips onto the ground. Perfect for trees that live in forests. They want to use their roots to suck up water from the ground. We can model another leaf shape with our hands. Let's do pine needles. Just stick out a few fingers. Do the same thing. Make some raindrops fall with your other hand. See what happens when the raindrops get to the pine needles. Maybe the pine needles are skinny and your raindrops fall right through them. Maybe the raindrops hit the pine needles and push them down. The raindrops, either way, are going to go onto the ground, and the tree will use its roots to suck them up from the ground. Now, the ground in the desert is very sandy. So we get up. Oh, it's hot. I should not have gotten that from the sunny part. The sand here is not nice, fine sand. It has a bunch of irregular shaped rocks in it. And what this means is that when it rains, the raindrops that go into the sand find their way between the spaces in these irregularly shaped rocks. So they rush through the sand really fast, and we get what's called flash floods, which you're probably familiar with. So the rain that goes into the sand runs really quickly down, and then look, there's no grass, there's no canopy. After it's done raining, any sand that still happens to be wet is going to dry up really quickly because it's out in the sun. So there's not really time for big plants like Joshua trees to use their roots to suck up water from the ground. The ground just doesn't stay wet for very long, even when it does rain, which is super rare. So Joshua trees have very special shaped leaves. The shape of their leaves is what allows them to get their water. And I really cannot encourage you enough to join me in this modeling exercise because it's very illustrative to show the shape of the Joshua tree's leaves. What we'll do is we're all going to make one Joshua tree leaf on our bodies. So take all of your fingers and put them together, and then put your pinkies together and make the whole long side of your hands touch with your palms facing you. Next, you're going to pull your elbows together and really glue your forearms together so there's no space. Then put your elbows against your body, kind of by your belly button. Okay, we all have just one Joshua tree leaf. If it was raining in our houses right now, or somebody came by and dumped a glass of water on our leaf, any water that landed on the leaf would end up right down our pants. A Joshua tree's leaf is specifically shaped like a funnel to capture water when it rains and direct that water to the plant's trunk. So Joshua trees have thousands of leaves, and they all have the role of collecting water when it rains and funneling that water to the plant's trunk. I'm going to show you, of course, now the inside of a Joshua tree. This is a little slice that was taken from a branch when they were doing some trimming along a trail. You can probably see, you can see straight through it. There's a hole in the middle. It feels very squishy. This one's dry because it's been cut off a tree, but when it was cut, this would have been soaking wet. It reminds me a lot of a kitchen sponge. The inside of Joshua trees are where they store their water, and they have all these tiny little holes, all these spaces that work just like a sponge, and that's what the plant lives off of. That's why they get so big. The bigger a Joshua tree is, the more leaves it has to collect water when it rains, the more space it has to store that water inside of itself. That also explains why they grow in so many funny shapes. Imagine inside the trunk and all of these branches is a whole lot of water. So if you pop up right now and you stand on one leg, you will notice that your arms go out for balance. A Joshua tree not only has its arms out for balance, it is growing in crazy patterns to try to balance how heavy those branches are. Because there's a bunch of water up there. Imagine holding a gallon of water in each one of your hands. They're trying to correct for the wind. They're also trying to correct for the soil, the sandy soil. They have super shallow roots that are close to the surface, so they can try to suck up a little bit of rain when the surface gets wet. But the sandy soil, they don't grow like a super deep tap root because there's no water down there for them to get. So they're trying to like stay, these top heavy organisms are trying to stay balanced in really challenging conditions. And that's what leads to all their amazing forms. Okay, we've been standing here long enough. It's time to go check out a Joshua tree for real. It's really hot out there, as you imagine. So I have come prepared. We're going to be using this shade umbrella as we hike around. So if you see my shadow, it's probably going to look a little crazy. I'm trying to keep the tablet in the shade as we hike so we don't get too hot. All right, let me flip you around here. There we go. And we're going to walk out, see what we can find. I better make you guys look at the ground because earlier today I was hiking up here and I almost stepped on a snake. So we have to watch, watch where I'm going. We do have a lot of different species of reptiles that are active this time of day. It's been a long, hot day and they're just starting to wake up to look for their food. You're probably noticing that really rocky soil as I walk up here. Oh, to pay attention to where the sun is so I don't make you guys stare into the sun. I want to show you this Joshua tree up close, but of course the leaves are up way too high for us to compare them to the model that we made earlier. Luckily, this Joshua tree has a little baby down here at the bottom. So let's go check out those leaves. The leaves of the Joshua tree, remember, are shaped like a gutter to collect water. I bet this little one is getting some water, some resources from this larger tree. Joshua trees do reproduce by cloning themselves, by sending up new, we call them pups, from the base of a mature tree. But we also have a baby that's from seed, and it's over here underneath this bush. This little Joshua tree started growing over here, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. Joshua trees are one of the shortest lived plants that grow in Joshua Tree National Park. They maybe live to be 150 years old, which seems impressive compared to humans, but compared to most plants like this cheese bush, this little Joshua tree is growing underneath, this cheese bush could easily live to be 300 years old, twice as old as a Joshua tree. Okay, let's take a look at this big Joshua tree again though, because I want you to notice one other adaptation that it has. You'll notice the trunk looks, well, if I can hold the camera still enough, you might notice that the trunk looks kind of furry, kind of fuzzy. That is some old dead leaves. When the leaves are no longer green, they fold down over the trunk and they create this thick kind of woolly layer. They are doing this for the same reason that I brought this sunbrella with us. They want to be in the shade. They have all that water in their trunk and they want to keep it cool. So they have this thick layer of old dead leaves. If I had a thermometer that I could like stick under here, it would be maybe 10 or 12 degrees cooler. underneath that shady layer of old dead leaves than it is out here on the outside. Whew, it is cooking. Okay, so we saw we saw the cheese bush here earlier. Probably noticing a lot of other bushes too as you walk around up here. Lots of times when people first arrive to Joshua Tree National Park, they think, oh, those plants all look dead. Indeed, the original name for this place was supposed to be Desert Plants National Monument. There's over 750 different species of plants that grow here. And the park's the park's champion, Minerva Hoyt, really wanted people to be able to value those plants. However, when the Department of the Interior folks from Washington came out, they looked around and they were like, oh, all these plants look dead. What are those tall ones called? The Joshua trees. So that's why they named it Joshua Tree National Park. These bushes indeed are not dead though. They just have another desert adaptation, which is dormancy. They are asleep right now. They don't have any leaves. They're not growing. They won't flower or make seeds anytime soon. They're just sleeping. They're resting. It's kind of like trees, in a forest that lose their leaves in the fall. Those trees aren't dying. They're just going to sleep for the winter, and they'll grow again when conditions are right. That's what all these desert plants are doing too. They are sleeping right now, but they will grow again when conditions are right. And they get incredibly old. Oh, we're looking at this ephedra right here. This plant right here, you might have heard it called Mormon tea. This plant can live to be like 600 or 700 years old. It's amazing. The reason that desert plants get so old is because it's really difficult for them when they are small. So when they're first trying to grow from a seed, they're really vulnerable to getting eaten by a desert animal. We just walked by something that would love to eat a tender little plant. Did anybody see it? Uh-oh, here it is. When a plant is small, an animal like a cottontail rabbit will nip it off right at the base. So most desert plants, once they get established, they grow very slowly and they have a very long lifespan. That's important to know for developers because we've seen a lot of people lately here just kind of like bulldozing, clear cutting. These plants live together in a community, and those communities take hundreds of years to form. So it's important not just to protect the Joshua trees, but all the other plants that grow around them too. Remember earlier we saw that little Josh tree growing underneath the cheese bush. That bush is serving as a little nurse plant for the baby Joshua tree, so it has shade until it can get bigger. Okay, we were right by this cactus, and I noticed there was another animal up in it. The cactus wren. Cactus wrens make their nest in all different types of cactus. Cactus is a great place for a bird to make a nest because the predator that most birds are worried about, snakes, have a hard time crawling up cactus. They can do it, but it is a little more challenging for them. Students often wonder, oh, how do they sit in the cactus like that without getting poked? I think lots of birds, and especially small mammals, we often see like squirrels up in the cactus too. I think they just don't weigh enough to really have those spines like poke into their skin. It's amazing. They don't get, like if I even brush against a cactus, I feel like it gets stuck on me, but lots of animals crawl around up there and have no problems at all. Okay, here we are, a famous California bird. This is the gamble quail. This is the desert version of quail. And our gamble quail are incredibly efficient with their water. Most desert animals like cactus wrens and cottontail rabbits and desert quail get all of the water they need from the food that they eat. This would be kind of like, if you're really thirsty and instead of drinking water, you ate some orange slices, or maybe you ate some grapes. You would feel less thirsty because you could get some of the water that you need from that food. Well, for animals like gamble quail, or even, oh gosh, this is a chuckwalla lizard. For those animals, when they feel thirsty, they eat their food, but their food often has the same water content as, say, like an almond or some peanuts. If I eat almonds or peanuts, I definitely am not able to extract any water from them. Indeed, I feel more thirsty after eating them. But desert animals are incredibly adapted to getting even the littlest bit of water out of their food. This chuckwalla lizard, you're probably noticing, has a really bright tail. They kind of blend in on their body, but then their tail is like really bold. It's kind of advertising, because this chuckwalla is a meal for lots of animals, especially the roadrunner. Roadrunners love to eat lizards. So if the roadrunner grabs the chuckwalla by the tail will come off. I mean, it's traumatic, of course, the amputation of the tail, but they can grow a new tail. There's just fat stores back there. So they're kind of advertising to the roadrunner, hey, grab me by my tail, because then they can escape. We have seen a lot of birds out here today. Oh, here's one more. And I must say that I'm not like, birds aren't my favorite animal, but we do most often see birds out during the day. This is a burrowing owl. So those are the animals that would be most likely to see if you were out in the park in the middle of the day. Burrowing owls are small creatures and they live in communities. So burrowing owls make their homes in the ground. They don't build nests, they dig burrows because they live in the desert and there's not a lot of trees to build nests in. So they dig burrows, and then those burrows, of course, where their babies are susceptible to a lot of predators. So they live in communities, they live in groups, so that when anybody's out hunting for tarantulas or scorpions or little lizards to eat, they can leave other adults back at the burrow to guard them, to keep the baby safe. Okay, let me show you one more desert animal. Oh goodness, I went over my time already, but this is my favorite one. I can't skip it. This is the desert tortoise. Desert tortoises are super cool animals. They are sadly on the endangered species list. There's not very many of them left in the wild. So if you know somebody who has a pet tortoise, that person has a special permit from Fish and Wildlife Service to have that animal in captivity. They spend most of their lives underground in burrows. So like 90% of their lives, I've heard, they spend underground in burrows. They do come out briefly in the spring to eat wildflowers and find a mate. And then also will come out at the end of summer. When it rains, they'll usually come out and get a drink. That's usually what reminds me to talk about giving wild animals plenty of space. We got pretty close to those cutout animals out there, but we always want to remind people during programs that wild animals need a lot of space. If you see a desert tortoise in the wild, make sure, lots of times, I mean, they're so cute, they're so fun to see. People want to get really close and take pictures, but tortoises store liquid water in special bladders, and they store that water inside of them for up to a year. So our tortoises that came out last summer to get a drink in August when it rained a whole bunch, they still have that water inside of them now. That's what they're living off of. So if you see one on a trail and you think, oh, neat, and you get too close to it, when they feel scared, they pee. So if a tortoise pees, then it loses all that water that it needs to be alive. So we always want to give wild animals plenty of space. If you do see a tortoise crossing a road and you're able to, if it's safe for you to play tortoise crossing guard, you can kind of have traffic stop until it can walk itself safely off the road. That's wonderful. If somebody's already zoomed right by it and it's pulled into its shell because it's scared, we would ask you to slowly and very carefully, with the tortoise close to the ground, move it off the road in the direction that it's traveling. We really want to try to avoid stressing these animals out, but every year we have a couple that are hit by cars because they're crossing roads. So that is one time that we would ask you to help them out by moving them. Okay, I don't know how, I think just because I was distracted by animals earlier, but I totally lost track of time. I'm well into your question time and I'm ready to take your questions. Ms. Reader, do we have any queued up here? You are on mute.
Unmuted now. Thank you for a wonderful, wonderful program, Sarah. It was great. So we don't have any questions yet. Everyone, please put your questions in there. I have a question. What kind of snakes? You briefly talked about snakes. Rattlesnakes, or must be lots of different varieties.
Yeah, we have 7 different species of rattlesnakes here. What's that? You don't think I can name them all? Okay, here we go. We have speckled rattlesnakes, western diamondback rattlesnakes, red diamondback rattlesnakes, Mojave sidewinder, Sonoran sidewinder, the dark Pacific rattlesnake, and did I say speckled? Oh yeah, I did. Green Mojave rattlesnakes. Most of the snakes that live in the desert, though, are quite small. Remember, the smaller an animal is, the less water it needs to survive. So a lot of the snakes that you'll see or that exist here are so little, you might confuse them with a earthworm. collared snakes, ringneck snakes, shovel-nosed snakes, desert thread snakes, desert night snakes. These are all itty snakes that mostly come out at nighttime. And if you saw one, you'd be like, oh, that's a big earthworm. It's just a little snake.
So 7 different snakes, and you can name all of them. That's remarkable. So now someone wants to know, which are the best spots?
7 species of rattlesnakes and a whole bunch of other
snakes. So which
are the best spots? They're all the best spots. The best spots for what?
Stargazing. Is it either the west or the north?
Yes, summer is a beautiful time to come stargazing at Joshua Tree National Park. Honestly, either entrance is fine. The north entrance, if you get up to like the Twin Tanks parking area, is great. If you can get over to Echo T parking area, that's where I usually send people. That's a great spot. You have a really beautiful view, like with Josh tree silhouettes kind of to the south and the big boulder formations to the north. Echo T is probably the easiest answer to that question.
Okay, so water supply for the park. Where do you get the water supply for the park for people that live there and people living actually in the town, 29 Palms? That's really close.
Excellent question. Yeah, most of the water for the communities here in the Morongo Basin comes from the Sierras. So our water comes from way up north in the Sierra Mountains. We used to have groundwater pretty close to the surface here, but once the Marine base went in and towns started really developing here, the water table has dropped significantly. So for example, the Oasis of Mara at 29 Palms used to be a natural fan palm oasis. There's a shallow fault there where groundwater was pushed up from below, but since there's so many people living here now, the natural water table has dropped so much that oasis was completely dry. The indigenous tribes associated with this area asked the national park to begin irrigating those palm trees. There's cool origin stories about the souls of their ancestors contained in the palms. And since it was an anthropogenic cause that made the water go away, Joshua Tree National Park is indeed watering plants in the desert. That was always exciting for people to hear during the major drought. What? We're watering plants? Yeah, water from the Sierra Mountains comes down to the Morongo Basin. We use it for all of our human needs and some natural needs too.
So what is the elevation at Joshua Tree, and does it snow there? That's what someone wants to know.
Yeah, we usually have a few snow days in the winter. We had a handful of snow days last year, probably 3 or 4 snow days. It's amazing to see the snow all mounded up on the Joshua trees and on all the bushes. The elevations in the park, you're going to be pretty low in the Pinto Basin, down around maybe less than 100 feet above sea level at the lowest parts of the Pinto Basin. And then there are big mountains too. So I'm here at Black Rock. I'm at 3,800 feet. Up in the mountains, we'll get up to around 4,000 feet above sea level. We're in the little San Bernardino Mountains here. So we're past like San Gorgonio, but not too far past it.
Thank you very much. So rock climbing in the park is popular. Where do you actually recommend going rock climbing there?
Yeah, rock climbing in this national park is really popular. It depends on your skill level. If you're just gonna top rope something, there's a bunch of easy routes like around the Hidden Valley neighborhood. If you are more adventurous, you can head farther into the Wonderland of Rocks. There are thousands of climbing routes.
So what are the different birds that you have at Joshua Tree?
We have really special birds here at Black Rock Canyon right now. That's probably partially why I'm distracted too. We have pinyon jays that are passing through. They usually come through here twice a year. I have a really obnoxious call, so it's probably good that they're not here permanently. We have hundreds of species of birds, especially during migration season, that are coming, up from Mexico, heading north to Canada. So up until like the middle of June, we were still seeing some pretty wild bird species that were just passing through. Residents, of course, we have our cactus wrens and our quail. We have lots of big raptors. So besides the burrowing owl and the roadrunner that we saw, lots of other species of owls, golden eagles, red-tailed hawks, little peregrine falcons, lots of birds that live here.
Lots of birds. So someone else wants to know, where was YouTube's cover photo for the Joshua Tree shot in Joshua Tree?
Oh, It was actually shot in Death Valley National Park. Remember, Joshua trees grow way farther north, that we're at the southern end of the range. So that famous picture, yeah, that was taken in Death Valley National Park.
Okay. So are there other questions? Okay. So you talked about birds, you've talked about rattlesnakes, other snakes. You've showed us the little bunny rabbits. And what else? What else? Are there any really big animals? Raccoons or possum?
Yeah, we do have a few species of larger animals. We have a relative of the raccoon called the ringtail cat. So a ringtail cat, sometimes people come to the park or in the visitor center and say, oh, we saw we saw like a one of those things that were in the Madagascar movie, a lemur. We saw a lemur. I doubt it. They probably saw a ringtail cat. It looks like a little, it looks kind of like a lemur. It's got a small body and a long black and white striped tail. And other mammals, we do have bighorn sheep that live here, and probably a handful of mountain lions. Remember, the bigger an animal is, the more water it needs. So most of the larger mammals, saber-toothed cats, Columbian mammoths, Shasta ground sloths, those really big mammals went extinct towards the end of the last ice age, about 12,000 years ago. So we find their fossils here, but we don't have any of them still living.
So are there any amphibians, somebody wants to know, or is the park really just too dry?
We do have we have California tree frogs, and we also have red-spotted toads that live here.
So you just never know when you going to see these different species, do you? It's just something, it's just as you walk along, you might be lucky or you just might not see them.
Yeah, usually early in the morning, right before and just after sunrise is when most everybody's up and moving around. Lately, it's been staying hot well into the evening. So even species that usually would be crepuscular active in the morning and the evening are kind of laying low in the evening, waiting for it really to cool off, maybe at like 2, 3 in the morning. The more an animal is active, the more water and energy it's going to need. So they just try to rest, which I think is a great model for anyone who's visiting a desert environment in the summer. Have a lot of people come into the visitor centers excited to go hiking. It's a beautiful place and there's lots of places you can go hiking, but in the summer we really have to be respectful of the environment to keep ourselves safe. So putting off activity until late in the evening or early in the morning is smart.
So have any of the plants there been used for food?
Yeah, lots of plants here have been used for food. This was a really important thoroughfare for groups of indigenous people who stayed at the Colorado River during the winter season. They would come through the Mojave Desert on their way up into the San Bernardino Mountains in the summer, and then come back through in the fall on their way back to the Colorado River. So there are many food plants that those people would take advantage of.
What would they be? Would you eat something of the Joshua tree, or is it, you didn't talk cactus? I mean, the cactus or?
Yeah, the cactus that are here, lots of times people think about like getting water from a cactus. I haven't heard in the Mojave Desert, I think most of the species of cactus are inedible. Maybe there are some opuntia, some paddle cactus that you could eat the fruits of, but like the California barrel cactus, if you tried to eat that, it would make you very sick. Joshua trees, we do not have a human use for. So you can't eat them, you can't use them for anything, which is probably why we still have so many of them. Probably during the early 1900s, if we had discovered a use for them, we would have chopped them all down in order to use them. Native Americans are probably eating a lot of pine nuts. You can make wee wash from scrub oak. The roots of lots of these bushes will make medicinal teas. I'm not a native foods expert. I'm so sorry. We do have several indigenous groups that offer programs like this, though. So if you're interested in that cultural history, I would recommend reaching out to those tribes because they are a wealth of information.
Thank you very much. So are there any animals that have come into Joshua Tree ecosystem and affecting the habitat?
Yeah, so the easy one is humans. We've had a wild effect on the systems that exist in this ecosystem. Just, I'm looking at it, some neighborhoods over here is just decimating those natural systems. With humans have come another animal, ravens. Ravens do not usually live in the desert, but ravens eat trash, and humans generate a lot of trash. So because there are humans living here and we are really trashy and leave pet food outside and dumpsters open, we have a lot of ravens who live here. Ravens will also eat baby desert tortoises. So if they find like a nest where a desert tortoise has laid their eggs, when those eggs hatch, the ravens will just eat all of those baby desert tortoises, which is one of the reasons that desert tortoises are on the endangered species list. We're just not seeing recruitment of babies that are maturing to reproduction age. So it's pretty sad. It's a good reminder that we need to be better stewards of the environments. If we can do a better job of taking care of our trash, there will be fewer ravens here, and then hopefully more desert tortoises.
Well, you've given us a wonderful tour today. So when you actually come to Joshua Tree, is there a visitor center you could that you would go and you could pick up a brochure and that would tell you what you're actually looking at and help you learn if you've never been there before?
Yeah, it's smart to plan a trip ahead of time. Our website is a wealth of information. So you can find information about camping, hiking, picnicking, night sky. If you want to visit with your pet, all that stuff is on the website. When you get to the park, whatever entrance you come to, there is a visitor center there. So you can pop in there and pick up a map and ask any questions you have. There's always rangers at the desk. And you can find the hours and the addresses of the visitor centers also on our website.
So you need to make a reservation if you want to camp at Joshua Tree.
I would suggest making a reservation. Yes.
How many campsites are there? Is there just one area that's a campsite, or?
No, we have many campgrounds. I think we have nine campgrounds. So yeah, you can check the website for information on camping and make a reservation where you want to camp.
So can you bring your pets along
Well,
with
crew, I have one more group that I have to get to, so I'm
Okay,
gonna have to wrap up. If you have more questions, Miss Reader does have my email address, so you're welcome to reach out with those. I gotta go dunk my iPad in the refrigerator real quick so it can cool down before my group at 5:45. Thank you so much for your participation. I really appreciate it. We want to say a special thank you to Miss Reader for setting this up. So we'll show some hearts to our cameras for her. I hope you guys can all come visit the park maybe after summer once it cools off. Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much, Sarah Jane. It was a wonderful presentation. Thank you so much. Give her a big round of applause, and thank you all for attending. We appreciate it very much. If you enjoy the programs, tomorrow you can join us to see the special program about, let me get the book, How I Shot Pluto and Why It Had It Coming. The book is by Mike Brown. You can sign up for that on our Pasadena Public Library web pages. Mike Brown is a professor, astronomy professor at California Institute of Technology, and that's tomorrow afternoon at 5 o'clock. So I hope you might sign up for that. So thank you so much for attending today, and we'll see you at another one of our programs. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you.